Hi, what's up? This is the Rallis Regimen. I'm Matt. This is Mike. And today we're going to talk about performance versus longevity. And training in our eyes, my eyes at least, kind of comes down to, in the broadest sense, training for performance, which is kind of the here and now, and training for longevity, which is needless to say for the long haul. Um, my training just naturally has obviously been less performance based than yours, given you were a Division 1 football player, NFL tryout, right into being a WWE superstar. It's like your life, entire adult life, has been physically performance based for your livelihood. I haven't had that obviously need for performance, but that's not to say that I haven't trained for performance at all. In fact, I would say,
Well, yeah, I mean, but also you have a much, well, not greater need for longevity, but maybe a need to focus on it. Would you say that's fair?
yeah, I would say maybe even less longevity specifically, and just like more of an idea of health,
Yeah,
which let's be honest, performance, depending on what it is not only not always synonymous with the best for longevity, but it's not even always synonymous with health. I mean, if we're talking about in an extreme sense, say bodybuilding performance, I mean,
yeah,
I don't think anybody who's being honest intellectually would argue that those guys at the top of that profession are in the best health. I mean, they have crazy amounts of muscle mass, probably more muscle mass than the human body was really intended to carry around in the healthiest way. And so
yeah,
I think for me, with like such an eye on health, um, performance in the extreme has taken a backseat.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's probably vice versa too, right? The performance or training exclusively for longevity. Like
Yeah,
I see sometimes, it's like, people talking about, you don't want your IGF-1 levels high, so eat low protein diet. That's not
right,
training, that's obviously nutrition. But it's like, yeah, I mean, if your only goal is to just avoid disease for as long as you can,
right,
then maybe. But
maybe.
that's only also if you're not training and specifically doing resistance training. And like those people, I just really don't get, like the people who just put longevity at
Well,
the forefront without regard to performance. And when I say performance, I don't just mean becoming an extremely successful bodybuilder, power lifter, athlete. I'm talking about like daily life performance, like being able
yeah,
to do active things, whether it's recreational activities like hiking or golf, tennis, or like cleaning the house or playing with your grandkids if you're at that age, whatever it is.
yeah,
If you don't have the ability to go through life in an enjoyable manner, who cares if your longevity is off the charts?
right. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And not to not not talking about anyone specifically, and this is doesn't apply to all people who are like very longevity focused, but what you're saying, the longevity in the extreme focus, I think sometimes you might find there that it's there's a bit of just it's an excuse, because
To
a
not,
lot of that to not focus on performance in any way. Like I don't want to get big. I don't want to be all bulky. It's like we're
yeah.
not talking
I
about
always,
being a bodybuilder. And it's
whenever I
like,
hear that, whenever someone tells me they don't really want to get big or bulky, I'm like, don't worry, you're not going, like,
you know how
unless
hard it
you
is
really
to get big and
try
bulky.
to. Yeah, yeah, you're
Yeah,
not going.
you
Don't worry
you
about
have to be you have to be so intentional about what you're doing to get big and bulky. Like people think if I go in the weight room a few times a week, I'm gonna my traps will be up here, and
it.
like
Yeah,
the stereotype is kind of like women don't
yeah,
want to get too big too, and it's
yeah,
like I don't know any woman who actually lifts who got bigger than she wanted to because she's not eating 5,000 calories a day.
right,
She's
yeah,
not training like 6 7 days a week in some hardcore way. And for the people who want to get big like that, then go for that and get big. But I think sometimes it's just like an excuse to not, because the performance, whether you're talking like you like elite athlete level or like you're saying just day to day performance of like life, like especially as you age. I think what's kind of ironic about like the longevity thing is as you age, your performance in day-to-day life actually becomes magnified, because like anybody who's 30 isn't really thinking about standing up and down off the couch or the toilet seat themselves. But a
Yeah.
lot of people who are 80 and 90, and if they get that, like they're not even able to do that day-to-day stuff anymore, because and they're lacking performance in day-to-day. And so
Yeah.
if you just aim for longevity and sacrifice performance, you're actually going to find that your performance is going to be the limiting factor as you
It,
age. And that
well, it's
training
the
for
limit.
that stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's the limiting factor in your longevity, right? Like if you can't
Right,
stand and walk and sit,
right,
or you can't catch yourself if you accidentally trip on the curb and start to
right.
fall, like that's going to severely limit your longevity. So, like building the
Yeah.
muscle and the strength and the quick twitch, like the type 2 muscle fiber to be able to catch yourself, and just the balance and stability to be able to walk and sit and stand, like you're saying, do all
Mm-hmm.
those basic activities. Like you need to be active to have good longevity. So like
Yes,
those types of performance markers are going to positively impact your longevity. That's kind of what I
100%.
don't get. And like I feel like I can say that pretty confidently.
Yeah, well, that's where I think it's an excuse, because what I was gonna say about that excuse is, if we're being honest again, it's like performance training in the stuff you just described, having that muscle, having the quick twitch. It's like that's often the hardest training in some sense. Like if you're
Yeah.
really longevity focused, people often think like, well, I go for a walk every
Yeah.
day or even a run. It's like, and there's great benefits to that, but doing a hard VO2 max workout on the bike or sprinting or doing a hard lower body lift, like
Yeah.
there's nothing that's as taxing on your system as those things.
Yeah.
That's
Hey,
just the bottom line. And so it's like a lot of people just don't want to do that. They don't like the feeling of it, whatever it is. And so
yeah.
it's like, well, I'm not a professional athlete. I don't need the performance. I just do this stuff for longevity. I just want to live a long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also, it takes the most energy and focus too, like you're not watching Netflix when you're doing, the middle of a heavy set of back squat like you would be when you're doing an incline treadmill walk. So I think
Correct.
that kind of just
Yeah.
adds to what I'm saying. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, the way I look at it personally is that I'm basically, and I used to only train for performance, kind of like you mentioned, football, wrestling. It was kind of my sole focus. And towards the latter half of my wrestling career, I started to bring in a longevity, perspective to the training, and largely because you opened my eyes to it. But I think, based on what we're saying here and just kind of my mindset, most of my training is still performance based. It's just to the point of I don't take it past the point of where it starts to negatively impact longevity, like you're saying, where I'm building so much muscle or I'm trying to get so massive. And that's like my only goal, to the point where it starts to negatively impact longevity, or I'm
Mm.
lifting such heavy weights that I'm putting myself at risk of getting hurt.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So on that point, let me ask you then, is there ever a time in your workouts where, outside of what you are actually kind of programming to do, where you're like in it and you're like, I'm gonna pull back on this a little bit. Like some joints, connective tissue is hurting, and you're like, whoa, hold on. I'm not wrestling right now, or I'm not playing football. Like I don't need to. It's the trade-off here of, hitting this 600-pound deadlift or whatever it is just like not worth it, or is that a difficult thing to switch your mindset on?
oh yeah, it's definitely difficult, but I've definitely gotten better at it too. I mean, it's
Mm,
yeah, for sure. I do that more now than I used to. I still do it too much. I mean, I sent you the
yeah,
video from a few months ago doing front loaded
yeah,
Bulgarian split squat with, I think
yeah.
it was 15. It was at least 300 pounds. And
Yeah. Yeah.
something tweaked. It felt like a pop. It scared me pretty
Yeah.
good in my hamstring, but I mean, it did severely limit my lower body training there for almost a month. And and it was never anything where like I couldn't walk or even
Right.
jog or sprint. It was kind of just in that specific, you know, kind of exposed position of the upper
Yeah.
hamstring that
Yep.
and I've hurt myself plenty over the years training. And I still, like I said, I still do it, but it's gotten less and less because I do. I just know I can train for each individual thing that I want to train for in a more controlled manner. So like
Yeah.
when I want to train for hypertrophy and really push the to the point of failure, I can go do that on the leg extension machine, which is a lot more safe than doing it back squat. And I can, if I want to train for absorbing force, instead of doing a depth drop into a broad jump into a sprint, which is what I did when I tore my Achilles. Now I just do the depth drop. And then
Mm.
separately I do a broad jump. And then separately I do a sprint. So I'm not doing the giant impact of a broad jump and then landing on one foot and putting my Achilles tendon in that kind of jeopardy. So I'll train for strength and I'll do it in a controlled manner. And sometimes I do it with band assistance so that at the very bottom where I'm kind of in that most vulnerable position, I have a little bit of band help.
Mm.
And so I just do things a little bit smarter. And then to your point where if I am a little bit sore or something doesn't quite feel right as I'm doing it, I'm a lot quicker to go, let's back off and go do something that I know will be safer because I don't need to do this. There's no exercise at this point in my life, but really for anybody, unless you're training for competing in that exercise, like a power lifter, you never need to do any specific exercise.
Right.
And definitely at this point in my life, there's no exercise specifically that I need to be really good at. And so I try to pick and choose the safe ones to really push myself for and just be smarter in my exercise selection. And when I go after it, make sure I'm feeling good and everything like that.
Right. You said you sent me the video when you tweaked your hamstring doing, what were you doing? You're doing a split, or was it
It was
Bulgarian?
It was a front loaded Bulgarian split
Front,
squat.
okay, front loaded Bulgarians with the barbell
Yeah.
with like 315 or something. You were doing it at Nick's gym,
Yeah.
our brother. And I was in his gym lifting sometime after that, and there was on the safety bar on the rack, there was like a huge chunk of the plastic gone. And his is, he knew fairly pretty new equipment,
Yeah.
nice stuff. And I'm like, what the hell happened here, Mike?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, what? I'm
He's
like,
not
oh,
happy about that.
he dropped something from, what, 6 feet up or something. He's like, oh, pulled his hamstring, whatever. I said, oh yeah, I saw that video. It was like 3. I'm like, I said, what? Yeah, what is he doing like 315 front loaded Bulgarians for anyways? And like Nick just shake his head like, I don't know. And it made me think of Nick and I were lifting together a few years ago now, and I don't even remember what we were doing. And he maybe bench press or something, and he racked it and was like, I'm good on that. And I was like, okay, yeah. And he's like, I don't. This is after he's done playing football and stuff. He goes, I don't go for that last rep anymore or last couple.
Yeah.
Like, and he just was like, it's not worth it. And I was like, interesting, because I mean, Nick's going to work as hard as anybody and push himself, and you too, me too. Like, that's the mindset. But like it's, as you get going in your training, like I think you find a place where you still push, but you push as hard as you can. But there's a thing where it's like, you just know, it's like, I don't need that extra. There's no way that extra rep is worth it. Whether you're like, to your point, even if you're a professional athlete, unless you were like, I'm a power lifter, I got to deadlift as much as I can. There is really, and you can maybe even make an argument that if you're actually just in training for that, it's still not worth it exposing yourself to that injury risk if something doesn't feel right to get that last rep. And so, when he said that to me years ago, it's like I definitely incorporated that. Probably already was on some unconscious level, but it made it more real to me. Like, yeah, you know what? I can still performance train. I can still get big and strong, bigger and stronger than I need to, and still keep myself healthy and keep myself, in firmly in the longevity category, and as well as performance. And if you hurt yourself anyway, like that's taking away, to your point, you couldn't do things in that certain exposure. You're taking away your performance in the longer run anyway. And so that's sort of my mentality on the performance training, is like push myself hard, like you said, within reason. As soon as it starts to get obviously cut into longevity, obviously cut into, expose yourself to injury risk, I think it's for the vast majority of people, it's time to pull back.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? Like I can tell if it's not me, if it's someone else, and they ask me, should I go for this last rep? I'm like,
Yep.
of course not. What are you doing? But when I'm there under the bar,
Mm,
it's really hard for me not to. So I've had to
yeah.
learn that. And just to reiterate how the story you just told just shows how dumb I was, because I didn't even have the damn uh safety, what do you call it, the rack
Yeah.
up
The
high
safety
enough,
bar. Yeah.
the safety bar, to where I had to drop it from 6 feet down to my knees.
You're right.
And yeah, I mean, it was just real stupid. I mean, I still
Yeah.
do stupid stuff, and I try to learn from it. I haven't done that since, so at least I've smartened up a little bit.